Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are immersing ourselves in, well, the definitive American anti-hero. You know the man, you know the smile, that predatory arched eyebrow, the slow, simmering menace that could just explode into magnificent chaos at any second.
That's him.
We are diving into the life and the 5-decade career of John Joseph Nicholson, born April 22nd, 1937, in Neptune City, New Jersey.
It's an epic subject, and what makes this deep dive so compelling is, I think, the inherent contradiction we find right in the source material.
Absolutely.
We are looking at a man who specialized in playing the charismatic rebel, the ultimate outsider fighting against the social structure.
Yes.
And yet, he became statistically one of the most successful institutional figures in Hollywood history. It doesn't quite add up.
That is the core mission today, right?
Yeah.
How does the perennial outlaw become the favorite son of the establishment? I mean, the sheer scale of his recognition is just staggering.
It really is.
We've got sources covering his 3 Academy Awards, 2 Best Actor, 1 Supporting Actor, 3 BAFTAs, 6 Golden Globes, and just a whole litany of Lifetime Achievement honors.
And we can't overlook the most delightful anomaly right out of the gate.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
He has a Grammy Award.
Wait. We have to properly unpack that cognitive dissonance right now.
Yeah.
Because this is a figure whose entire legacy is built on the cynical, the menacing, the psychologically disturbed, and the aggressively cool.
Right.
He's got an Oscar for playing a psychopath, and he also has a Grammy for what exactly?
He won a Grammy Award in 1988 for Best Children's Music Album.
You're kidding me, a children's album.
For a spoken word recording of Rudyard Kipling's The Elephant's Child, which he shared with jazz vocalist Bobby McFerrin.
No way.
It is utterly baffling and just wonderful. It forces you to realize that the raw talent beneath that rebellious surface is far more diverse and, I think, controllable than his public persona suggests.
That immediately throws the whole notion of the Jack Nicholson persona for a loop, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But the deeper institutional contradiction, that lies in the Oscar numbers.
Absolutely. The tension is baked right into the statistics. Nicholson holds the record as the most nominated male actor in Academy history.
The most ever.
12 nominations across the lead and supporting categories. And you have to think about that longevity, that consistency.
It's incredible.
This wasn't some flash-in-the-pan rebellion. This was 5 decades of sustained, recognized brilliance. The Academy, which is the ultimate symbol of Hollywood permanence, right? They rewarded their ultimate outsider more than anyone else.
How the outlaw became the record holder. Okay, that's the story we need to tell. We have to start right at the beginning, because the mystery and the complexity that defined his career, well, it started with the secrets and service that shaped his formative years.
The origins are worthy of a 1940s noir film, honestly. John Joseph Nicholson was born in 1937 to June Frances Nicholson, a showgirl who used the stage name June Nilsson.
But she was very young.
Just 17 years old at the time and unmarried, which, back then instantly created a need for some discretion within the family structure.
A huge scandal.
Huge. She was of mixed descent, Irish, English, German, Welsh, but Nicholson has always primarily identified as Irish. He famously compared himself to the playwright Eugene O'Neill once, saying, "I am a writer, I am Irish, I have had problems with my family."
And the paternity situation was murky, to say the least. It just adds to this sense of a hidden past.
It was incredibly convoluted. So June married a man named Donald Fursillo, who went by the stage name Donald Rose. But that marriage was invalid.
Why?
Because Fursillo was already married to someone else.
Oh, wow.
Then you have the later speculation, particularly from biographer Patrick McGilligan, suggesting that June's manager, a man named Eddie King Edgar A. Kirschfeld, he might actually be the biological father.
So from day one, his identity was clouded by multiple potential fathers and this legal tangle.
Right. All of this chaos led to the necessary cover-up, the secret that defined his entire upbringing.
Which was a big one.
It was huge. His maternal grandparents, John Joseph Nicholson, who was a department store window dresser, and Ethel May, a hairdresser and amateur artist, they made this extraordinary decision to raise him as their own son.
So the people he thought were his parents
were actually his grandparents. And this meant that June, his biological mother, lived in the household but functioned as his older sister.
And his aunt.
His Aunt Lorraine was also presented to young Jack as a sister. This arrangement demanded constant performance and, complicity from the entire family.
It's astonishing that this family drama, this constant required performance of a false reality, that it lasted for decades.
Right.
But the truly cinematic moment is how the truth eventually came out.
Right.
It wasn't some deathbed confession or a tearful family meeting.
Not at all. The entire structure of his childhood identity was dismantled by investigative journalism.
Unbelievable.
In 1974, Time magazine researchers, they were compiling a profile on this rapidly emerging star, and they uncovered the details. It was these reporters, not his family, who informed a 37-year-old Jack Nicholson that his sister, June, was in fact his mother, and his sister Lorraine was his aunt.
And crucially, by the time he got this earth-shattering information, both June and Ethel May, his mother and grandmother, were gone.
Both had passed away by 1970. June died in 1963, so he never got to confront them or, discuss the reality of their decision.
How did he process that news, given his later reputation for emotional volatility?
You would expect a volcanic, dramatic reaction, wouldn't you? But the sources indicate a surprising psychological resilience, a kind of detachment. He described the moment as a pretty dramatic event, but it wasn't what I'd call traumatizing.
Really?
Yeah. He noted that he was pretty well psychologically formed by that point.
That measured response is so telling. It suggests that the chaos we see on screen is a chosen performance, while underneath, there's this highly controlled, well-organized mind.
I think so.
Maybe the ability to live with and maintain a great secret for 37 years actually informed the self-discipline necessary for the roles he would later choose.
It connects directly to the need for control and performance, right? When your identity is built on a lie, you learn to read the room, control your expressions, and you understand the mechanisms of deception. Yeah. That is the raw material of an actor.
Wow.
He learned the craft of controlling internal chaos long before he ever stepped onto a set.
And we see that controlled chaos emerge early on in his New Jersey youth. He grew up in Neptune City and Spring Lake and attended Manasquan High School.
The high school nickname was Nick, and he was voted class clown. But again, this wasn't just lighthearted fun. The sources emphasize he was notorious for being in detention every single day for one entire school year.
Every single day. That's not just clowning around, that's a mission statement.
It is. He was testing boundaries, demanding attention, and mastering the persona of the charming disruptor.
It's a perfect microcosm of his future career then. Constantly pushing the limits of the institution, yet still being celebrated by it. They even have a theater award named after him there now.
The irony is rich, isn't it? The daily detention recipient becomes the standard bearer for dramatic arts. But before Hollywood really took hold, he had to deal with the demands of the Cold War. In 1957, he joined the California Air National Guard.
And he didn't mince words about why he joined the military establishment.
No, he openly admitted later this was an effort to dodge the draft. At the time, conscription meant 2 years of active duty. The National Guard allowed him to fulfill his duty with weekend drills and annual training, keeping him closer to California and his budding acting dream.
So he served, but the motivation was inherently anti-establishment, a strategic avoidance of the more rigorous demands of government service.
It's another small paradox. He served as a firefighter at the Van Nuys Airport Unit, which is a surprisingly blue-collar, ground-level job for a future star. However, his service wasn't purely passive. During the intense international tension of the Berlin crisis in 1961, he was called up for an extended period of active duty. He was finally discharged at the end of his commitment in 1962. So the man who had come to define the 1960s counterculture spent time in uniform right as the decade was beginning.
That sets the stage perfectly for the long, hard climb through Hollywood, the B-movies, the writing, the directing, and then that eventual explosive anti-hero breakthrough that defined the end of the 1960s. He'd moved to California much earlier, right?
He had. She first arrived in 1950, just 13 years old, visiting his sister, who was actually his aunt. He quickly got a job working as an office worker at the MGM cartoon studio.
Right, and here's where we get that incredible what-if moment in animation history.
Yeah.
The Hanna-Barbera anecdote.
Yes. The legendary animation directors, William Hanna and Joseph Barbera, were so impressed by his quick wit and demeanor that they offered him an entry-level job as an animator.
He could have been drawing Wile E. Coyote instead of playing the Joker. That's a career path detour and a half.
A massive one. But he turned it down flat, citing his overwhelming singular ambition to act. He then trained at the Players Ring Theater. His official film debut came pretty quickly in 1958 with the low-budget teen drama The Crybaby Killer, where he starred as the lead.
This launched him into what we have to call the Roger Corman era, a grinding decade of low-budget, high-turnover filmmaking that was the proving ground for virtually everyone who mattered in the 1970s.
The Corman films are essential viewing if you want to understand the raw, unpolished energy that Nicholson brought before he learned to harness it. He collaborated frequently with Corman, and the variety was immense.
And of course, there's that famous cameo.
The one in the cult classic The Little Shop of Horrors from 1960 as Wilbur Force, the masochistic dental patient.
No Novocaine, it dulls the senses. A cameo that's still talked about 60-plus years later. It's a short, bizarre role that just shows his willingness to go absolutely over the top.
And he continued with genre schlock, appearing in things like The Raven and the truly strange The Terror. In The Terror, he played a French officer who is seduced by an evil ghost.
You have to imagine the frustration of a serious actor who sees himself as, part of this Brando tradition, doing battle with an evil ghost in a quickie Corman picture.
It underscores that the path to anti-hero stardom wasn't glamorous. He worked with director Monte Hellman on these low-budget westerns too, right, in The Whirlwind and The Shooting.
Which found a strange audience, didn't they?
They gained a real cult status in the French art house circuit later on, which is a great piece of trivia. The ultimate American outlaw actor was first appreciated by European critics.
But despite the volume of work, his acting career through the mid-60s was, by conventional metrics, failing to launch. He was stuck.
He was, and this is where his intellectual capacity, the part of him that was a writer, not just a performer, kicks in. He pivoted behind the camera.
This is a critical pivot point that I think often gets minimized in his biography. He showed he understood the mechanics of storytelling, not just how to deliver a line.
Absolutely. When the acting roles dried up, he started writing and directing. His first substantial success behind the camera was the screenplay for The Trip in 1967, directed by Corman. This was a quintessential counterculture film dealing explicitly with LSD use and the whole psychedelic movement.
He was actively writing the scripts that defined the anti-establishment ethos.
He was at the center of it. And then he moved on to co-write Head in 1968, starring the Monkees, which demonstrates a willingness to engage with pure pop culture while still injecting those counterculture elements.
And he arranged the soundtrack.
He even arranged the soundtrack. This period writing, arranging, being deeply embedded in the creative process of the underground, it sharpened his perspective. It meant that by 1969, when the opportunity arose, he wasn't just a desperate young actor vaulting out of the screen, as he put it.
Right.
He was a filmmaker, a writer, and a fully formed creative intelligence who deeply understood the mood of the culture.
And that deep understanding positioned him perfectly for the lucky break that changed everything. Easy Rider.
Easy Rider in 1969 was the moment of explosion. He stepped into the role of the alcoholic lawyer George Hansen and earned his first Oscar nomination.
And the context around the role is so key. It wasn't even his to begin with.
No, it had originally been written for Rip Torn, who famously had a volatile argument with Dennis Hopper and withdrew from the film.
One argument changed the course of Hollywood history. It's hard to overstate how significant that late-stage casting was for Nicholson.
It was an act of destiny, frankly. The film was made for a shoestring budget, only about $400,000, but it grossed a monumental $60 million.
Wow.
This immediately elevated Nicholson from a B-movie fringe actor to an overnight #1 hero of the counterculture movement. He embodied the intellectual yet dissolute side of the late 60s rebellion.
And his own self-assessment of this transition is incredibly insightful.
It is. He reflected later that before Easy Rider, all he could see in his early work was this desperate young actor trying to vault out of the screen. The George Hansen role gave him the platform to stop vaulting and just be.
And the establishment immediately noticed, even if the film itself was counter-establishment.
The biggest names noticed. Stanley Kubrick was so impressed by that performance that he briefly considered casting Nicholson as Napoleon in his proposed epic.
From Corman B movies to Kubrick's Napoleon, that's a shift.
That signals the shift in his status from jobbing actor to major player.
Okay, let's move into the 1970s and 80s, the era of definitive stardom, the Oscars, and crucially, his deep commitment to improvisation and craft that challenged traditional Hollywood norms.
The 1970 film 5 Easy Pieces really cemented his persona as the new American anti-hero. He played Bobby DuPaix, a disillusioned oil rig worker.
The famous chicken salad sandwich scene.
That's the one. And the complexity here, noted by his co-star Karen Black, is that DuPaix was subdued, emotionally closed off, and fundamentally different from Nicholson's actual personality, which he described as a very curious, alive human being.
So even that early anti-hero was an act of controlled restraint, not just an outpouring of his natural chaos.
That's the subtlety we often miss. He was deliberately crafting a professional strategy. He told his agent, Sandy Bressler, to find him unusual roles and cusp characters.
Cusp characters.
Characters living right on the edge of social acceptability and emotional control. He wasn't interested in conventional wisdom. He wanted to explore characters that were still wild or adventurous.
This strategic approach paid immediate dividends, didn't it?
Absolutely. It led to a steady stream of critically acclaimed, complex roles. He won Best Actor at the Cannes Film Festival for his work in The Last Detail in '73, playing a Navy shore patrol officer tasked with escorting a young sailor to prison.
And Roger Ebert was famously effusive about that performance, wasn't he?
Ebert called The Last Detail a very good movie, but essentially argued that Nicholson's complex acting was the singular reason for its quality. He said Nicholson creates a character so complete and so complex that we stop thinking about the movie and just watch to see what he'll do next.
That suggests he had achieved a level of command where the audience wasn't watching a plot. They were watching a personality unfold.
Exactly. And the major career transition, the one that fully moved him from the counterculture to the high-stakes, classic Hollywood canon, was Chinatown in 1974.
A monumental shift.
As private detective Jake Gitz, Ebert explicitly stated that Nicholson stepped into Bogart's shoes. He successfully synthesized that raw anti-hero energy of the '60s with the sharp, menacing sophistication of classic film noir. He perfected the persona of a man who is dangerous, intelligent, wickedly amused by the world's corruption, and still attractive to the audience.
That film brings us directly to the context of his deep friendship with the director, Roman Polanski. We have to address the complicated, dark connections surrounding that era of Hollywood.
It's crucial context. The source material shows that Nicholson and Polanski were friends long before the horrific events of the Manson family murders. After the murder of Sharon Tate, Nicholson supported Polanski. He slept with a hammer under his pillow out of fear and attended Manson's trial.
A fierce loyalty in a period of genuine fear and paranoia in Hollywood.
Right. And this bond was tested years later when Polanski was arrested at Nicholson's home in 1977.
For sexual assault.
That's correct. Nicholson was filming out of town, but his longtime girlfriend, Anjelica Huston, arrived unannounced to pick up some items. She encountered the situation and later testified that she had witnessed nothing untoward. The sources use this incident to highlight the intense, often morally ambiguous and boundary-pushing Hollywood culture of that era.
Moving back to professional triumphs, 1975 delivered his first Academy Award for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. This role seems custom-made for the Jack Nicholson persona.
It was the perfect vehicle. He played Randle McMurphy, the ultimate anti-authoritarian figure who challenges the repressive system of the mental institution. Biographer Ken Burke observed that the role allowed him to perfectly balance his smart-ass demeanor with a real underlying concern for his fellow patients.
He was the free, independent spirit that the system was desperately trying to crush.
He was. And what's fascinating about this Oscar-winning performance is how much of it was left open for spontaneity, which flies in the face of the structured system of Oscar bait performances.
The director encouraged it.
Miller Forman actively encouraged, even demanded, improvisation. Most of those unforgettable group therapy sequences were spontaneous exchanges between the cast members. A reviewer at the time, Marie Brenner, noted that Nicholson's bravura performance wasn't just strong on its own, it continuously inspired the rest of the ensemble. His energy was propelling the whole film.
He wasn't just a performer, he was a catalyst for the whole group, and his commitment to artistic risks continued, exemplified by his work with the legendary auteur Michelangelo Antonioni in The Passenger.
The Passenger is a fascinating example of his deep intellectual engagement with filmmaking. He plays a journalist who assumes the identity of a dead man, only to discover the man was a weapons smuggler.
Not exactly a commercial premise.
Not at all. And Nicholson admired the film so much, despite starting the production with an unfinished script, that he actually purchased the world rights to it. This shows profound belief in the project, not just a paycheck role.
His commitment to his craft was also rooted in deep respect for his predecessors, especially Marlon Brando.
His admiration for Brando was monumental. He called Brando the patron saint of actors and claimed to have watched On the Waterfront something like 40 times in his youth.
40 times?
Back when he worked as an assistant manager at a theater. He views himself as part of the first generation of actors who truly idolized Brando's revolutionary style.
And this brings us to one of the most intellectually compelling insights from your sources. Nicholson's quiet, yet profound claim about method acting.
This is a massive revelation because the method is usually associated with deep, visible, emotional immersion, while Nicholson is often viewed as a spontaneous, chaotic natural.
Right, you think of him as just letting it all hang out.
Exactly. Yet he told Sean Penn, "I'm still fooling them because no one perceives him as a method actor." He claimed it was an accomplishment that people didn't realize he used the method, suggesting he understands it academically and utilizes it more than most.
That is the ultimate Jack Nicholson mind game. The man whose public persona is all about throwing away the script and being free is secretly a highly disciplined method actor who is deliberately concealing his technique.
The chaos is controlled, the freedom is constructed. It perfectly aligns with the man who maintained that detachment about his own family secret. He controls the external perception while employing extreme internal discipline.
And that tension between control and chaos peaked in 1980 with The Shining, delivering one of the most manic and unforgettable villain performances in cinematic history.
Stanley Kubrick was absolutely determined to cast Nicholson as the writer Jack Torrance, despite Stephen King's famous preference for an everyman type.
King wanted someone who looked like he could be your neighbor so the descent would be more shocking.
But Kubrick won the argument, believing that Nicholson's abilities were on a par with the greatest stars of the past, like Spencer Tracy and Jimmy Cagney.
If Kubrick, the ultimate cinematic perfectionist, is putting you in the same league as those legends, you know you're working at an elite level. What was the preparation like, given Kubrick's notorious demanding nature?
It was intense. Nicholson prepared by drawing on his own experiences as a working writer and intentionally slept very short hours throughout the grueling production to maintain the agitated mental state necessary for Torrance's descent into madness.
And the takes.
He worked within Kubrick's framework, doing certain scenes, like the famous ghostly bartender interaction, up to 36 times due to Kubrick's insistence on perfection.
So he endured the brutal, repetitive grind of the ultimate institutional director, but the chaos agent in him was still allowed to surface. How did Kubrick reconcile his perfectionism with encouraging improvisation?
He trusted Nicholson implicitly to deliver something brilliant. Kubrick, knowing Nicholson was master of his lines, actively encouraged him to go off script, and that's how we got the most iconic, terrifying line in the film.
Here's Johnny.
Entirely improvised by Nicholson. He also improvised the scene where Torrance lashes out at his wife when she interrupts his work.
So the performance is a perfect blend. 36 takes of institutional discipline mixed with moments of total, explosive, unscripted anarchy. That really sums up his career mandate.
It does. And the 1980s saw him successfully translate that creative intensity into massive commercial and critical success. He won his second Oscar in 1983, this time for Best Supporting Actor, as the aging, hedonistic playboy Garrett Breedlove in terms of endearment.
Playing a romantic lead, albeit a deeply flawed one, showed extraordinary range coming right off The Shining.
It demonstrated his versatility across genres. Biographer McGilligan noted that the chemistry between Nicholson and Shirley MacLaine was constantly tested and adjusted in rehearsal, giving the film its buoyant edge, and his acting was described as Jack floating like a butterfly.
Floating like a butterfly. I like that.
It was a lighter, more graceful performance than the menace he was known for, and he continued that streak throughout the decade, earning nominations for his quiet intensity as Eugene O'Neill in Reds and for Prizzi's Honor and Ironweed.
John Huston, who directed Prizzi's Honor, praised his stunning efficiency, didn't he?
He did. Huston noted that Nicholson just illuminates the book. The movie is composed largely of first takes with him. He was performing at an incredibly high level, yet maintaining that sense of effortlessness.
But the decade closed with the role that made him a blockbuster superstar for a new generation.
The Joker in Tim Burton's Batman in 1989. And this wasn't just a creative triumph, it was a financial watershed.
Oh yeah, the money on that was legendary.
It redefined star power compensation. Nicholson secured a percentage deal based on the box office gross, estimated to have earned him between $60 and $90 million. He later reflected on this role with unique pride, calling the performance a piece of pop art.
He brought the anarchy of the counterculture into the mainstream blockbuster machine and got paid very handsomely for it.
As we transition into the 1990s and the established icon phase, we see that pattern of contradictions continuing. He's receiving the highest institutional honors and the most ridiculous popular condemnations, almost simultaneously.
Right. The early 90s started strong with a Best Supporting Actor nomination for his explosive portrayal of Colonel Nathan R. Jessup in A Few Good Men.
You can't handle the truth.
That's the line. Director Rob Reiner observed that Nicholson's full-out performance sets the tone for the other actors, forcing everyone else in the scene, Tom Cruise, Demi Moore, to elevate their game just to stand opposite him.
But 1992 was also a truly bizarre year professionally. He received Razzie Award nominations for Worst Actor for 2 films, Man Trouble and Hoffa. Simultaneously, he received a Golden Globe nomination for that very same performance in Hoffa.
How does the same performance receive a nomination for Worst Acting, a nomination for a major industry award? That makes no sense.
It speaks to how polarizing his method could be. David Thompson, a major film critic, called Hoffa one of his very best screen characters, portraying someone who is snarly, dumb, smart, noble, rascally, all the parts of Jack.
The public just expected the mania, and when he gave restraint, some found it lacking. But the critics recognized the subtle craft.
Exactly. And that contradiction finally resolved itself in 1997 with his 3rd Oscar win.
For as good as it gets.
This was for James L. Brooks's romantic comedy. He won Best Actor for playing Melvin Udall, the mean-spirited novelist grappling with severe obsessive-compulsive disorder. He was very conscious of the technical demands of the role, saying, "I'm a studio method actor, so I was prone to give some kind of clinical presentation of the disorder."
And by winning this, he tied himself with some serious company.
Yes. His 3rd acting Oscar tied him with historical legends like Meryl Streep and Daniel Day-Lewis for the 2nd most acting Oscars ever. Only Katharine Hepburn has more, with 4.
And the film was a massive hit.
Huge. Grossed over $300 million. He was wary of playing a middle-aged man opposite the much younger Helen Hunt, feeling it was a tired movie cliché. But Hunt managed to instantly disarm him. She said, "He treated me like a queen," and they quickly connected on a compatible frequency.
As we move into the 21st century, the honors continued, even as the output slowed down a bit.
In 2001, he received the Stanislavski Award at the Moscow International Film Festival, specifically for conquering the heights of acting. He earned yet another Academy Award nomination for About Schmidt in 2002 for a quietly restrained performance as a retired Nebraska actuary. This was maybe his most reserved, understated performance to date.
A deliberate choice to resist the expected explosion of energy.
I think so. In the mid-2000s, delivered one last iconic villain, this time under the direction of Martin Scorsese.
The Departed.
In 2006, he played Frank Costello, the nefarious Boston Irish mob boss based on the real-life Whitey Bulger. It was a late career return to menace, earning him massive critical praise and a Golden Globe nomination.
He followed that up with something much lighter.
The Bucket List in 2007 with Morgan Freeman, even researching the role by visiting a Los Angeles hospital to observe cancer patients.
So when did the curtain finally start to draw on this incredible filmography?
His last film role to date was the romantic comedy How Do You Know in 2010. That capped his filmography at 80 films.
But he resisted the term retirement, which is important for understanding his persona, isn't it?
Very important. He clarified in 2013 that he was not retired, but rather less driven to be out there anymore. He's been approached for major roles since, including a cameo in the sequel to The Shining, Dr. Sleep, and a role in Spielberg's Ready Player One, but he has respectfully declined.
The drive is gone, but the commitment to the possibility of work remains.
Precisely.
Now we come back to the numbers, because this is the statistical proof that the Rebel was fully integrated into the establishment.
This is truly unprecedented consistency. Most nominated male actor in Academy Awards history with 12 total nominations. But even more impressive is his 5-decade run. He is one of only 2 actors, along with Michael Caine, to be nominated for an acting Oscar in films made in every decade from the 1960s to the 2000s.
That kind of longevity, recognized at the elite level, is almost impossible to replicate.
Right. And the 3 Oscar wins place him in the highest echelon of acting history. But we promise to return to that bizarre piece of trivia that just shatters the image of the menace.
The Grammy.
The Grammy for Best Children's Music Album for The Elephant's Child in 1988. It's the ultimate juxtaposition. The man who embodies cynicism and chaos, sitting down to record an earnest children's story, it highlights his supreme voice control and range.
That bizarre piece of trivia actually helps explain the tension you mentioned earlier, the underlying control of the apparent chaos. He is adaptable to every medium, and beyond the prizes, he's been recognized by major cultural institutions.
He received the AFI Life Achievement Award, the Cecil B. DeMille Award, the Kennedy Center Honor. Brown University gave him an honorary Doctor of Fine Arts degree, and my favorite honor. In 2018, an Australian fishing spider, Ornodolomedes nicholsoni, was named after him for brilliantly portraying diverse personalities.
The man is a living, breathing paradox, now with a spider named in his honor. Incredible. Now let's dive into the man behind the legend. His private life, his politics, and those legendary hobbies that make up the public persona.
His private life is famously complex, fitting his on-screen reputation for emotional independence. He only married once to his The Terror co-star Sandra Knight from 1962 to 1968.
Just the one time.
But he is the father of 6 children by 5 different women: Jennifer, Caleb, Honey, Lorraine, Ray, and Tessa. The relationship dynamic was always one of flux.
His longest and most highly publicized relationship was with Anjelica Huston.
That romance spans 17 years, from 1973 until 1990, characterized by an on-again, off-again dynamic that openly included his overlaps with other women.
Right. And the sources detail the complicated structures of his family life. He publicly acknowledged his son, Caleb Goddard, whose mother was Susan Ansbach, in 1998, stating they got along beautifully now, resolving years of public speculation over paternity.
Despite the reputation as the ultimate Hollywood bachelor, he clearly takes his responsibility as a father seriously.
He does seem to.
He stated that children give your life a resonance that it can't have without them. As a father, I'm there all the time. I give unconditional love. That said, he did acknowledge the sacrifices made for his career, lamenting that he didn't see enough of my eldest daughter because I was trying to make a career.
An honest reflection on the cost of achieving that 5-decade stretch of success. Next, let's look at his political and religious views, which, as expected, are refreshingly and fundamentally unconventional for a major star.
He is a lifelong Irish Democrat, supporting liberal figures like McGovern, Dukakis, or Hillary Clinton. But it's his unique stances on specific issues that reflect his anti-establishment ethos. He supports solar energy, raising teachers' pay, monopoly laws.
And the big one.
And notably, the decriminalization of drugs.
Supporting drug decriminalization, particularly during the height of the war on drugs in the 80s and 90s, was a profoundly countercultural political stance for a celebrity.
It connects directly to his anti-authoritarianism. He sees these issues through the lens of individual freedom and resistance to government overreach. He's always been suspicious of systems designed to enforce uniformity.
But the most powerful political position he holds is the one tied directly back to the profound secret of his childhood: his famous stance on abortion.
This is the abortion paradox, and it's one of the most intellectually consistent arguments he has ever made. He states that he is personally against abortion, but is vehemently pro-choice.
And he explains the contradiction by saying,
It would be hypocritical to take any other position, because he is an illegitimate child myself. I'd be dead. I wouldn't exist.
That is powerful. He bases his political philosophy on the gratitude that the women in his life made a choice that allowed him to exist.
Exactly. He expresses total admiration, gratitude, and respect for the women who made the difficult decisions in his own case. It personalizes the issue and links the most profound public debate back to the formative secret that launched his life.
His religious views also show a similar journey away from institutional control.
He was raised Roman Catholic and tellingly admired the religion, calling it a smart religion. He appreciates the structure and intellectual framework. However, by 1992, he publicly stated that he didn't believe in God anymore.
So, the ultimate iconoclast, longing for the structure and comfort of faith, but unable to accept the dogma.
He expressed that exact sentiment beautifully, saying, I can still work up an envy for someone who has faith. I can see how that could be a deeply soothing experience.
And speaking of defiance and unconventional connections, what about his meeting with Fidel Castro?
In 1998, he met Fidel Castro, the revolutionary Cuban leader, and publicly referred to him as a genius. This further solidified his public image as a figure who was willing to step outside of and even actively provoke mainstream American political opinion.
Okay, now let's dive into the real bad boy behavior that reinforced his cinematic persona in real life, starting with the infamous road rage incident involving a golf club.
The golf club incident of February 1994. Nicholson, then 56, was involved in a road rage confrontation in North Hollywood. A man named Robert Blank filed a criminal complaint.
What happened?
Blank stated that Nicholson approached his Mercedes-Benz at a red light, accused him of cutting him off, and then proceeded to use a golf club to bash the roof and windshield of the car.
That is pure Jack Torrance energy spilling over into reality. The man whose performance in The Shining defines cinematic madness brought that violent volatility to a suburban intersection.
It was an extreme public display of his high-octane temperament. He faced misdemeanor charges of assault and vandalism.
Which were dropped.
They were, but only after he issued a public apology to Blank and reached an undisclosed settlement, which included a reported payment of $500,000 from Nicholson.
So the guy who played the chaos agent in Easy Rider essentially paid $500,000 to settle a real-life taste of road rage. It cemented the image that the cinematic chaos was not entirely separate from the man.
And that volatile energy was literally localized on his street. Nicholson lived next door to Marlon Brando and Warren Beatty on Mulholland Drive, which earned the nickname Bad Boy Drive.
His connection to Brando remained deep, even after his death.
Indeed. After Brando died in 2004, Nicholson purchased his dilapidated bungalow for $6.1 million, specifically with the purpose of demolishing it.
Wow.
The building was reportedly derelict and mold-plagued, and Nicholson said he felt compelled to tear it down out of respect for Brando's legacy.
That's loyalty through dramatic, expensive demolition, a very Nicholson gesture. He also maintains other key friendships that speak to his place in Hollywood royalty.
He was a close friend of producer Robert Evans of Chinatown fame. He was also a close friend of Hunter S. Thompson, attending his memorial service, and he maintains long-standing friendships with his fellow New Jerseyans Danny DeVito and Joe Pesci.
Finally, let's talk about the hobby that cemented his public persona outside of movies, the one place where the anti-hero acts as a fixture. His status as the courtside king of the Lakers.
Since 1970, he has been a season ticket holder for the Los Angeles Lakers, holding those iconic courtside seats right near the opposing team's benches. He is a recognized fixture at the games, and his behavior there mirrors his on-screen roles: argumentative, demanding, and utterly engaging.
He's known for arguing with officials and opposing players, right? He uses his star power to become a physical part of the game.
He's the ultimate courtside disruptor. He famously almost got ejected from a playoff game in 2003 after yelling at a referee. While he withdrew from regular public appearances around 2021, he made a rare, highly noted appearance at a playoff game in 2023, his first in 2 years.
The loyalty endures. And outside of sports, we see the serious intellectual side again in his renowned art collection.
He is a serious connoisseur. He is known for collecting major 20th century and contemporary paintings, including works by Henri Matisse, Andy Warhol, and Tamara de Lempicka. An expert noted in 1995 that he had one of the best collections out here in Los Angeles.
The chaotic, golf club-wielding rebel is also a disciplined, refined collector of fine art. It's fitting that his influence resonates with actors who came after him, like Leonardo DiCaprio and Alden Ehrenreich, continuing his legacy into the next generation.
What a tapestry of contradictions he presents. From the secret birth that demanded performance, the disciplined service in the National Guard, the B-movie struggle that forged his creative intelligence, it all feeds into the icon.
And when you synthesize it, what do you find at the center of the phenomenon?
The synthesis is his supreme ability to control his own chaos. He managed to weave together the raw, unpolished talent visible in those early Roger Corman pictures with an intellectual depth that allowed him to write and direct. He infused every performance with a core emotional vulnerability, whether it was the cynical lawyer in Easy Rider or the raging writer in The Shining, which made the anti-hero relatable, not just frightening.
It brings us back to our starting point, the ultimate paradox. The Jack Nicholson we see is the definitive, chaotic, anti-authoritarian figure of American cinema. He's the one who exists outside the system, who questions authority, who embodies the spirit of rebellion. Yet he is statistically the most decorated and institutionally recognized male actor in history, holding records for consistent excellence across 5 decades.
The rebel is crowned king. He beat the system by becoming the system's favorite rebel.
So, what does this tell you about the nature of Hollywood stardom and the systems that define it? That the greatest institutional recognition, the highest mountain of Oscars and Lifetime Achievement Awards, is reserved for the ultimate outlaw. Is the validation of true revolutionary talent only achieved when the system manages to capture, frame, and put the chaos on permanent, glorious display? That's something to mull over. Until the next time we take a deep dive.
Welcome to The Debate. So today we're digging into the legacy of Jack Nicholson. I mean, a career spanning 5 decades, just a seismic force in American cinema, really defining that shift from the counterculture all the way to the modern blockbuster. We're talking about arguably the most critically decorated male actor in history.
Oh, absolutely. A titan. But the nature of his legend, the core of his significance, that's where we really disagree. The question isn't if he's a legend, but, well, why?
Exactly. And that's the central question for us today. Is Jack Nicholson's legacy defined by the quantifiable stuff, the unprecedented professional consistency and all those accolades, or is it really about the cultivation of his unique, unconventional, anti-authoritarian persona?
I think it's clear the enduring power of Jack Nicholson, the myth, the charisma, the reason everyone knows that face, it's all rooted in the persona, the anti-hero, that unpredictable, rebellious force he brought to the screen.
And I'm going to argue that while that persona is undeniable, of course it is, it's his objective statistical achievements, the sheer technical mastery and professional longevity that took that personality and turned it into an unparalleled, institutionally validated legacy. Okay, so to me, if you want to understand his legacy, you have to start with the objective evidence, the professional record. Nicholson is simply an unparalleled figure because of his sustained quality. Just think about the scope. He was nominated for an Academy Award in every single decade from the 60s to the 2000s, a 5-decade span of consistent recognition. Only Michael Caine has matched that.
That is impressive longevity. I'll give you that. But those accolades are just the system recognizing the material he chose to pursue. His path was defined by his radical artistic choices, not by playing the industry game.
But consistency isn't just showing up. It's about demonstrating quality across totally different genres and character types, all validated by the highest honors. He has 12 total Academy Award nominations. That makes him the most nominated male actor in history. He got 2 Best Actor Oscars, one for the chaotic Randle McMurphy in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and another for that tightly wound author in As Good as It Gets. And then, of course, a Best Supporting Actor for Terms of Endearment.
And those wins were only possible because the industry eventually caught up and recognized the power of the anti-hero archetype that he perfected.
But these achievements are tied to sustained excellence. Honors like the AFI Life Achievement Award or the Kennedy Center Honor, they don't give those out for just being a cultural flash in the pan. They are institutional validation of a career that, for all its eccentricities, maintained an extraordinary benchmark of quality for 50 years. That is the definition of consistency.
I frame it differently. His cultural footprint started way before those Lifetime Achievement Awards. It was rooted in the persona he built right after Easy Rider in '69. That film, it immediately made him the overnight #1 hero of the counterculture movement. He became synonymous with the charismatic rebel. The initial power of his appeal wasn't something you could measure with stats. It was just this raw, anti-authoritarian energy.
The initial spark, maybe. But an enduring legacy, that requires structure, technique.
See, I'm not convinced because even the structure of his career was defined by his relentless search for the unconventional. He was always seeking out unusual roles. He said himself he liked playing a cusp character, someone right on the edge. Early critics, they immediately compared him to the raw energy of a Marlon Brando or James Dean, not the refined excellence of a Spencer Tracy.
And yet, it was Stanley Kubrick who put him in that exact pantheon.
Yes, but even in that praise, Kubrick says Nicholson's acting is on a par with the greatest stars of the past, like Spencer Tracy and Jimmy Cagney. But then he adds that his work has an X factor, magic. And that intangible magic is the whole point. It suggests his quality goes beyond standard technique. It's an innate, electric personality that you can't quantify with awards, but it's absolutely central to his legacy. The persona is what makes the legend.
Let's dig into that X factor a bit more, especially this tension between, say, strict cinematic control and his spontaneous persona. I would argue that Nicholson's most immortal performances happened precisely when directors let him off the leash, let him reject the script, and just lean into his own improvisation.
I'd challenge the word reject. I think it's more like professional mastery being leveraged for maximum effect, within the confines of a major production. But the effect feels inherently anarchic. His first Best Actor Oscar was for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Milos Forman famously gave him the space to improvise, especially in those group therapy scenes. That freedom is what made McMurphy the ultimate symbol of the untamed spirit. And then you've got The Shining. One of the most terrifying, quotable lines in film history, "Here's Johnny," was completely improvised. Those moments are burned into our memory because they felt totally unpredictable, driven by the actor, not the script.
And while that spontaneity is, of course, fascinating, it just highlights the professional mechanism underneath. How did he consistently execute and, frankly, monetize that rebellion into institutional achievement? He didn't call himself a chaotic rebel. He called himself a studio method actor.
Okay, but what does he actually mean by that? Because those two things sound like a contradiction.
It means he takes the deep emotional commitment of method acting, that pursuit of truth, but he applies it with discipline, reliably, within the commercial machinery of Hollywood. It means the spontaneity is a technique he can turn on and off. It's a tool. It's not just pure, uncontrollable chaos. To credit these moments to just an accidental persona, I think that discounts the incredible rigor it takes to pull them off, flawlessly, time and time again.
But the essence is still that wild energy. The roles that define him, McMurphy, Joker, J.J. Gitz, they're all variations on that same dangerous rebel.
Okay, if his legacy is only that explosive, anti-authoritarian rebel, then how do you explain his later work? Specifically his highly praised performances that are defined by profound restraint. I'm thinking of his Oscar-nominated role as the retired actuary in About Schmidt.
That's a fair point.
That performance has none of the explosive energy you're talking about. It's quiet, it's interior, it's sad, and it was a commercial risk. It shows a deep versatility and a commitment to the craft that goes so far beyond just being the counterculture guy. The consistent quality, the technical mastery, that's what allowed him to pull off a performance so opposed to the Nicholson myth and still get that critical acclaim. All right, let's turn to the commercial side of this. The intersection of that anti-authoritarian character and mainstream success. Because the ultimate proof of his professional consistency is his ability to have massive commercial hits while playing these roles. It means he mastered the system without sacrificing his unique appeal.
I agree he had huge success, but that success was entirely dependent on the market wanting and rewarding that distinct persona. The persona drove the money, not the other way around.
But the sheer scale of the success demonstrates structural mastery. I mean, look at Batman in 1989. He plays the Joker, the ultimate anti-hero villain, and the deal he cut was legendary. He walked away with an estimated $60 to $90 million from a deal that gave him a percentage of the gross and all the merchandise.
That's an astronomical figure for an actor, then.
It is. This wasn't just a high salary. This was a power structure agreement. It shows his star power gave him the leverage to completely bypass traditional studio control. The system didn't just tolerate his rebellious style, it eventually surrendered financial control to him because his name guaranteed a return. Nicholson himself called his Joker a piece of pop art. He knew he was successfully packaging his unique style for global consumption and a huge institutional reward.
That's a strong case for how he leveraged his power. But I'd argue that even in those huge hits, the critics all pointed to his archetype as the source of his value. Roger Ebert, when he talked about Chinatown, said Nicholson created the persona of a man who had seen it all and was still capable of being wickedly amused. That role, which was his big transition out of B-movies, it cemented him as this Bogart-like figure of both comfort and danger.
So you're saying the market was rewarding the archetype?
Exactly. His box office value, whether in Chinatown or Batman, was a direct result of the unique, non-traditional characters he brought to life. It was the cusp character the audience was paying to see, which means the character choice and the persona are the primary legacy, not just the money they made. The system had to bend to him. And to really underscore how dominant the persona is, we have to look at the alignment between his personal life and the anti-hero myth. For so many people, his off-screen reputation just perfectly matched the roles we celebrate him for. It suggests, a real unity between the man and the myth.
I understand we have to address his private history, but I do worry about giving too much weight to celebrity gossip when we're talking about cinematic achievement. The work has to remain the focus.
But for an anti-authoritarian archetype, the blurring of art and life is the whole point. The fascination is part of the persona's power. We're talking about a man whose private life was defined by, what a lot of people would call chaos. His inability to settle down, 6 kids with 5 different women, only married once.
And the high-profile incidents certainly didn't help the perception of volatility.
No, they absolutely fueled it. You think of the 1994 golf club incident. Assault and vandalism charges filed against him later settled for a reported $500,000. Penelope Gilliatt described his character in The Passenger as a drained man whose one remaining stimulus is to push his luck. When his private actions mirror that archetype, it just reinforces the myth that the character isn't just an act, it's him. The persona is validated by the life lived on that cusp.
but that premise suggests the chaos somehow enhances the art. And I struggle with that conclusion. I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that legal troubles or a complex love life significantly contribute to his cinematic legend.
But why not? The public doesn't separate them. When we talk about Jack, we talk about the whole mythos.
Because the ultimate shield, the thing that protects his status from being derailed by his personal life, is the quality of the work. You have critics, David Thompson, for example, who observed that not even his huge wealth, his reckless aging, and the public disasters of his private life can detract from this touchstone status.
That statement, though, assumes the touchstone status is already there for his personal life to be forgiven.
Precisely, and that touchstone status exists because of what he did on screen, over decades, in a sustained, consistent, professional way. His legacy is defined by his commitment to excellence. His career proves that structured, rigorous, technical mastery is the framework that let him elevate his unconventional personality. The consistency of the art is what gave the personality permanence, not the other way around. So, at the end of the day, it comes back to the empirical foundation. Nicholson's unprecedented achievements, nominated for an Oscar in 5 straight decades, holding the record for male acting nominations, that provides the irrefutable evidence. He's the benchmark. The consistency is the legacy.
And I see it from a fundamentally different place. The true measure of his influence isn't in the numbers, but in the unforgettable, unconventional characters he chose, the cusp character that broke the mold. The enduring power is that unique personality, that X factor and magic he brought to his roles, which really defined an entire era of the anti-hero.
It is clear that his career is this spectacular case where statistical excellence and a fiercely individual persona just came together perfectly.
Indeed. And the brilliance of Jack Nicholson is that he forced this rigid, institutional system to validate the anti-authoritarian myth. The debate, I guess, remains whether it's the framework of professional achievement or the figure of the charismatic rebel that ultimately defines the legend.